Welcome back to Metis IAS. In GS Structural Autopsy of PYQs 2013 to 2025 series, we've completed GS3, GS2, and GS1 history part completed. So, we are moving to the society part, that is the GS1 society. So, in this section, students' mistakes cause more marks. So, aspirants prepare society as a list of topics. Those are caste, family, globalization, secularism, etc. They memorize definitions, collect examples, and walk into the hall ready to describe each one. And then the paper asks something their preparation never trained them for. Not what is caste, but why is caste both static and fluid? Not what is globalization, they asked, but they asked, does globalization produce only an aggressive consumer culture? The definitions are useless against those questions because those questions are not testing whether you know the topic or not. They're testing whether you can think about what happens when the topic is put under pressure. So, this mismatch is happening all the time. So with this mismatch, students cast their marks. So here is the reframe for the whole session. So every society question is a collision. It takes something old and inherited social structure, caste, or family, or religion, or tribe, or gender, or reason, and it applies something new, a modern force, globalization or urbanization or technology or liberalization or migration. And then it asks you what happens at the point of where the old meets the new. So that collision is the entire paper. Once you can see it, 70 plus questions across 13 years stop looking like a sprawling, unpredictable syllabus and start looking like one move repeated. An inherited structure, a modern pressure, a tension at the seam, and a verdict on what survives, what changes, and what the two together become. So, here the old and the new modern thinking collide with the pressure in the form of caste, family, etc. So, notice what that mean of your preparation. You are not preparing topics, you are preparing a machine. You are preparing a framework. One you can run on any collision the examiner hands you, including collisions that have never appeared before. For example, you have taken PYQs. In 2021, they asked about cryptocurrency. In 2024, they asked about demographic winter. In 2025, they asked about fast food. Those are not topics you could have memorized, but they are collisions you could have run the machine on. And a new technology meets an old society. A global trend meets the Indian family. The framework is older than any single question. So today we do three things. We watch how the asking have evolved from 2013 to 2025 because the examiner has been raising the bar in a very specific direction. We organize the inherited structures into six families you can recognize on site. So, and we build the answer writing engine, the thing that runs recognition into marks. So in this introduction, the thing is very clear. When the old society meets new technology, when the old family, caste, religion meets new globalization, migration, meet, what collision happened, what consequences happen, what changes happen. That is the thing we have to consider and understand. The technology meets an old society, global trend meets an the Indian family. That is the collision. The machine is older than any single question. So that is what we have to understand from the 2013 to 2025 questions. With these questions, we are classified into question families, we are classified into eras, and we are going to discuss one by one with PYQs. So, going to the next segment, that is how the asking evolved. So, we are moving to the before families. Look at the shape of the paper over time, because it tells you exactly what is the examiner now wants, and it's the same drift you will find in every maturing UPSC subject. So the early papers, roughly 2013 to 2016, they asked you to describe and explain type of questions. Look at the verbs. 2013 they asked discuss the various social problems of urbanization. Then 2015 they asked describe describe any four cultural elements of diversity. In 2016 they asked what is the basis of regionalism. These are inventory questions. Name the things, explain the things, a well stocked memory scored well. So here the question is asked directly. Directly, they asked the questions are directly. No analysis is need of the hour year. So questions directive words also simple, like discuss, describe, etc. So this is the era we will. This is era where students well stacked memory scored well, did well in 2013 to 2016, because the questions are mirrored syllabus heading. Those are a stacked memory scored. So concept causes effects and measures. Simple. That is the thing in 2013 to 2016 questions. When comes to the middle papers, roughly 2017 to 2020, shifted to distinguishing and judging from describing. So the webs changed here. In 2017, distinguish religiosity, distinguish religiosity from communalism. Distinguish. 2014 and 2018, how does Indian secularism differ from the Western model? 2020, has caste lost its relevance? This type of questions asked from 2017 to 2020. One thing I have to remember and clearly tells you regarding West Indian secularism differ from the Western model. This question is asking again and again, whether it is comes to the GS paper 2, whether it comes to the society GS paper 1, whether it comes to the essay. But this thing is UPSC focusing again and again. So this is the thing you have to be focused, understand, observe, as far as Indian secularism differ from the Western model. So this is the most important thing. And comes to this era. In this era, Memory alone fails. Memory alone not sufficient. You have to draw a precise line between two things that look similar, or take a defensible position and defend it. Why? Because they are asking the in the 2017 question, distinguish religiosity from communalism. So you have to distinguish. You have to take your side. And 2018 also, how does Indian secularism differ from the Western model? You have to give your judgment. So the exam started rewarding not only memory, discrimination, and judgment over call. So judgment is now important in the middle years. Then the recent papers, roughly 2021 to 2025, this era is called as the third era, era number three. Ask what a structure is becoming under a brand new force. And critically, the forces themselves became contemporary and unmemorizable. So memory has gone 2013 to 2016. So in this era, 2021 they asked cryptocurrency, the gig economy. In 2022, work from home. 24, demographic winter. In 2025, fast food. Look at the questions, look at the technology, look at the direction. So the displacement rehabilitation axis of tribal life. So this is the question. The examiner is no longer testing your stock of prepared knowledge at all. That testing whether you can take a structure you understand and project it forward through a pressure you have never revised. So this is general studies, this is society. So you have to focus on society rather than stock knowledge. So we are testing the trajectory. What is the trajectory? That is in era 1 describe, era 2 judge, and era 3 project. So but hear me very carefully. This is a shift in the center of gravity, not a clean break. So you will find the judgment stem questions early. In 2015 already asks you to critically examine population and poverty and to debate Dalit assertion. Questions also early judgment stem questions, and you will find the descriptive questions late. So the eras don't switch cleanly from one mode to the next mode. The weight moves. They asked questions in in the particular eras also, but lightly they asked. The weight has been changed by years after the year. So what matters is the direction of travel, and the direction is unmistakable. That is away from recall, that is away from memory based questions, toward method, toward analysis, toward thinking, toward thought process. The questions are increasingly designed to defeat memory. That is the thing you have to observe very carefully here. So they can only be beaten by a method, and that method is what the rest of this session we are going to build. So, and one structural note of honesty here is, because I will come up, society, unlike some sections, appears every single year and carries serious weight. It is not a section you can skip and hope. The themes rotate, but the section is permanent. So the method has to be permanent too. So we are discussing so far about all the three eras. What we understand so far, the 2013 to 2016, they asked questions like describe. On that time, the questions mirrored syllabus headings, direct questions. When you are with memory based, you have good memory, then you can achieve good marks, because questions are that type of questions on that time. Then comes to 17 to 20, that is era number 2. The shift has started. The weight has visible. like distinguish, compare, take a position, judgment, that type of questions. In this time, recall alone is starts to fail. Recall alone is not suffice. So you have to think, you have to judge. Then comes to the era number 3. The shift has been undeniable and uncleared, because new technology meets the society, old society. So that is here the new force emerged. So this is era we are dealing with. For more moving forward, the era is going to change further and advanced. So for that we are going to prepare. What is the method we have to prepare? So because this society section is weight in GS paper 1, it carries good amount of marks. So we have to be prepared for good method, rather than recall, rather than memory. That is the thing we have discussed so far. So we are moving forward with the classification of families. These questions classify these previous years questions from 2013 to 2025 classified into the 6 families. What is the 6 families we are going to discuss? Now the inherited structures themselves. I have grouped 13 years of questions into 6 families. What are the families? Learn these 6 and almost every society question announce which family it belongs to in its first few words. And the same ground rule as always, a question can belong to 2 families at once, maybe. That is gender and globalization, caste and urbanization. And when it does, that overlap simply tells you which structure to lead with and which pressure to bring in as the force acting on it. So any question maybe belongs to 1 or 2 families. That is not an issue. Overlap will happen. But you have to understand these 6 families, then you can move to write good answers. So we are moving to the family number 1, that is caste, the structure that refuses to die. The pattern here is old hierarchy to modern force. New form, not disappearance. Caste is not disappearing. Here is the single most important thing about how caste is examined. The exam never asks directly, does caste still exist? That type of thinking, that type of way of preparing questions is waste of the time. It asks how caste changes shape. Look at the progression. 2018 question asked, caste is assuming new identities and associational forms, hence cannot be eradicated. Look at the question. They asked indirectly. 2020, has caste lost its relevance? In 2023, why is caste identity both static and fluid? In 2015, do Dalit assertion movements work towards annihilation of caste? Every one of these assumes caste persists and asks about its mutation. The changes of the caste has been asked from years. That is the question underlying these questions so far. So, what is the trap to avoid? You have never write an answer that argues caste is simply disappearing and our modernity, and never write one that argues it's frozen and unchanged. Both are wrong by construction, because caste does not disappearing now, and that is not unchanged. It is changed. It is shaped, reshaped with mutation. So the correct shape is always caste persists, but it has changed its function from a ritual hierarchy of purity and pollution into a political and associational identity, a vote bank, a network, a basis for both discrimination and mobilization. So the shape is changed. Simply, the shape is changed. Caste in the form of associational identity, political vote bank, network, both discrimination and mobilization. So that is caste is persistent, but shape is changed, mutation. So static in that it survives, but fluid in what does it keeps changing. That is the 2023 answer in one sentence, and it's the template for the whole family. So static, it survives. There is no doubt about the dam, but fluid in that what does keep changing. Fluid means shape, mutation, etc. So this is most important family as far as GS paper 1 society is concerned. Then we are moving to family number 2, that is religion, secularism and communalism. The boundary family. What is the pattern here? Faith, politicization, and the line between the two. So this is the most conceptually demanding family. That is religion, secularism, and communalism. And it has very specific recurring demand. This draws a precise boundary. Indian secularism versus Western secularism, asked in 2014 and 2018. Religiosity, religiosity versus communalism, 2017. And communalism as power struggle versus relative deprivation, 2018. These are line drawing questions between the religion and the secularism, between the secularism and the communalism. So these are the line drawing questions. The marks live not in describing either side, but in locating the exact point where becomes the other, where private faith becomes public mobilization, where the Western wall of separation becomes the Indian equal respect for all faiths. So the boundary stem is the most teachable skill in the entire paper and one most aspirants fumble. So we will come back to a boundary question for the live demonstration at the end. So as far as this family is concerned, religion, secularism and communalism. This is the most boundary questions. This is most important for political politicization. Actually, the faith in the people, that is politicization, that leads to politicization. Then the line between the two. So this is the pattern. So this is sometimes politicization is most most important thing for parties, political parties. So we are moving to family number 3, that is family and marriage. This is the intimate structure under economic pressure. What is the pattern here? Traditional bond then leads to economic and technological force, strained but adapting. This is the pattern here. The family is where the modern pressure is most personal. The giant family's life cycle, depends on economic factors rather than social values, given in 2014. Marriage as a sacrament losing its value, given in 2023 PYQ. Work from home is impact on family relationships 2022. Mobile phones replacing child cuddling and reshaping socialization, given in 2023. Intercaste versus interreligious marriages, given in 2024. Notice the consistent engine: an economic or technological force, migration, work from home, the smartphone, the cash economy, presses on the most intimate inherited bond. And the question asks whether the bond breaks or bends. The strong answer almost always shows it bends, because the Indian family adopts its from while retaining its function. Adaptation, not collapse. Because Indian family adopts now, form has been changed to nuclear, transitional, digitally mediated. So this is adaptation rather than collapse. So this family is also important. This is actually the intimate structure under economic pressure. So this is the family and marriage. This is the family and marriage. This is family number 3. So in this they asked questions. Look at the questions: joint family, marriage sacrament, work from home, mobile phones replacing child cuddling, reshaping socialization, intercaste versus interreligious. So look at the questions they asked year after year. So the bond did not break, bond bends, changing adaptation, not collapse. So we are moving to the family number 4, that is tribe. The one or many tension. It is also known as. What is the pattern here? Distinct community to state or market intrusion, then rights versus identity. This is the pattern to disturb the tribes. Tribe appears almost every year and pulls in two directions. One axis is rights and the state. Scheduled tribe constitutional provisions, they asked in 2016. Displacement and rehabilitation, asked in 2025. The favorable tribal sex ratio, they asked in 2015. This is the one axis is rights and the state. Rights, tribal rights and the state. This is the one axis. And the second axis, the other axis is identity and knowledge. Tribal knowledge systems versus mainstream systems. 2021. And the sharp 2020 question, 22 question, given their diversity, in what context should tribes be treated as a single category at all? This is the two axis. One axis is what? One axis is what? Rights and the state. And second axis is tribal. Second axis is identity and knowledge. So this is the two axes every year question have been asked from years. So hold the tension consciously, because the exam keeps probing it. What? Tribes are simultaneously one administrative legal category and many distinct cultures, and a good answer refuses to flatten that. So the 2022 2025 questions are the same unresolved question seen from two angles. Then we are moving to family number 5, that is gender and patriarchy. This is also known as the densest intersection in the paper. What is the pattern here? Patriarchal baseline, modern opportunity, then leads to empowerment promised. This is the highest volume family in the set, and nearly every question runs one engine. That is, a modern economic force promises women's empowerment, and you are asked to weigh that promise against the stubbornness of patriarchy. So, opportunities promised, but patriarchy persists. This is the thing here. So, 2021 one question asked gig economy and women's empowerment. Then 2024 again asked skilled young women migrating to cities and what it does to their freedom and family ties. Look at the question. Look at the question. The young women and with the family ties and with freedom. This is the beauty of UPSC asking the questions. Globalization's next question. Globalization's positive and negative effects on women. This question asked in 2015. And feminization of agriculture, this asked in 2014. Women's suicide rising in 2023, they asked. Look at this family, gender and patriarchy. So the sex ratio paradox is most important. This why prosperous regions have versus worse sex ratios. In 2014, they asked. And notice that this one is a paradox you must resolve, not just name, which is the skill we will come to. So, what is the resolution? Prosperity does not dissolve sun preference, it equips it. Wealth makes sex selective technology affordable. Dowry expectations often intensify with rising status. And the modern small family norm collides with the old preference for sons. So fewer children plus surviving son preference produce a worse ratio, not a better one. So the modern force did not defeat the patriarchal baseline. It gave it new tools. The resolution is the answer. And the women's movement critique that it ignored lower strata women. In 2018, they asked, belongs here too. This type of questions asked in gender and patriarchy. What is the reusable framework? Name the patriarchal baseline, name the modern opening, then show the partial nature of the gain. So, economic participation without decision making power, mobility without safety, visibility without security. The marks are in that. But a modern force opens a door. Patriarchy reshapes itself to stand in the new doorway. Build that one framework well and it answers a dozen questions. So this reusable framework, as far as this questions family number 5 belongs to, that is gender and patriarchy. The reusable framework like this. First of all, we have to prepare few things. Name the patriarchal baseline. Name the modern opening. Then show the partial nature of the gain. Then economic participation without decision making power, mobility without safety, visibility without security. This is the way a modern force opens a door, then patriarchy reshapes itself into a stand new doorway. Build that one framework. It will it will help and it answers a dozens of questions. This is like opening, introduction, opening as well as called as introduction, then body, and then new doorway will use it to as conclusion. So this type of reusable framework for answer writing is also need of the hour. So ultimately we are going to write in the examination. That is the thing. Whichever knowledge you have, that is not the thing. The presentation in the form of answer is the ultimate thing we are going to do. Then we are moving to family number 6, that is region, urbanization, and demography. This is the spatial family. What is the pattern underlying it? Uneven development, it leads to spatial demographic pressure, it leads to assertion or strain. This is the pattern. This family is about India in space and in numbers. Region is almost always asked as cause and effect. In 2016, 2030, 2013, and 2020, they asked, does unequal development cause regionalism? Urbanization is asked a cost as cost benefit. IT hubs bring a new avenues but new problems. In 2017, they asked. Smart cities, 2016. Segregation of the poor in metro policies, that is asked in 2023. Tier 2 cities and the new consumer middle class, 2022, they asked. Demography is asked as paradox or chicken and eggs. Does the population cause poverty or poverty cause population? This asked in 2015. Demographic winter in 2024, they asked. Population education, 2021, they asked. The unifying move is after the observation of these underlying pattern, a spatial or numerical pressure meets an unevenly developed society. And the result is either assertion in the form of regionalism, demand for state, or strain, urban segregation, demographic imbalance. So, here, spatial pressure or numerical pressure then meets unevenly developed society. Then moving the regionalism, urban segregation, demographic influence, etc. So, and one honest caveat before we leave the families, because no scheme is airtight. A handful of questions don't sit on a single inherited structure at all. They hand you a modern pressure by itself and ask for its social impact, like cryptocurrency in 2021, digital initiatives in education in 2020, globalization and a new technology in a world of scarce resources in 2022. So there is no single old structure under the microscope here. So the force itself is the subject. Don't force those into a family. Instead, run the engine in reverse, take the pressure and ask the structure across societies it touches and how each responds, the machine still runs. You just feed it from the other end. We will see exactly how when we build engine. Till now we discussed so far in the six families, six inherited structure behind every question from 2013 to 2025. We have discussed six families. That is family number one, caste. Then second family number two, regionalism. Religion and secularism. Also communalism. And family number three, family and marriage. And family number four, that is tribe. Then family number five, gender and patriarchy. And family number six, region, urban demography. These families we discussed so far from 2020, 2025 to 2020, 2013 to 2025 questions. Few questions does not sit in these six families. Those curveballs keep keep outside these families, because some cryptocurrency type question, digital initiatives in education type questions, globalization and new technology types of questions outside this family. So what we have to do is reverse engineering with the technology what they asked. So cryptocurrency and society, or digital initiatives education and society, we have to think that you just feed it from the other end. So we have to understand the pressure and ask the structure across the society it touches and how each responds. So this type of reverse engineering is need of the hour as far as this particular outside the family questions. So everything in this family, everything in this family is one structure problem. It leads to another thing. We'll take caste. Caste has persistent old hierarchy, but new associational form. The shape has been changed in the fluid form. Comes to religion and secularism. Faith always been faith always been in the people's mind. That is politicization. Then the boundary lines happen. Then comes to family and marriage. This is the intimate bond. This is the intimate bond. This bond broke or bend under the economic strain, due to economic strain. So marriage is not broken yet. Adaptation, adaptation, not collapse. So comes to the tribe, the one legal category, many cultures. How it sit under this one legal category? So that is the strain happened. When the strain happened, revolution or outcome will in the form of policy will happen. So comes to gender and patriarchy. Patriarchy persistence. Why? But we promised opportunities like women empowerment, etc., etc. But patriarchy persists. With the woman empowerment going with the freedom, ultimate family ties, what happened? The structure is revolving around that. And comes to the family number six, that is region, urbanization, and demography. In these two things happen: uneven space of development, uneven space, assertion or strain. It comes to regional separate statehood or regionalism, and urban segregation and slums, etc., etc. So this is when we observe, when the assertion or strain happened to the structural pressure. When the pressure happens, then it leads to outcome or policy. So this is the way you have to think as far as society is concerned. You have to understand the first underlying thing, then only you can easily understand all these things, and then you write a good answer. So we are moving to new segment, that is answer writing engine. This is also called as STEM grammar, what we called. This is the engine. This is where society marks are actually won or lost. Because here is the commonest failure in the whole paper is the aspirant currently identifies the topic. Correctly, have to correctly identifies the topic, prepares good content, and then writes the wrong kind of answers for the question that was actually asked. That is the thing main here. They write an explanation when the question wanted a distinction. The mismatch is happening. That is why marks lost. They list causes when the question wanted a judgment. So before you write a single line in the answer, identify the stem, identify the directive what they given in the question. There are only four stem types in this entire paper, and each demands a structurally different answer. We are going to discuss these four stems. First and foremost, that is stem one, the paradox system. How can we understand? How can we identify? Signaled by like X, but also Y, elucidate. So this is the paradox system. Let me take an PYQ example. Globalization promotes homogenization, but cultural specificities are strengthened. In 2018, they asked, does globalization produce only an aggressive consumer culture? 2025, they asked. In this, the examiner has built a contradiction into the question. The fatal error is to pick a side. A paradox stem demands that you hold both halves and resolve them. Show how both can true at once. Globalization homogenesis surfaces brands media while provoking a defensive deepening of local identity. You must honor both limbs or the answer fails by design. So you have to give the two answers, two halves, then with the resolution. When resolve them. That is the question. Comes to globalization promotes homogenization, but cultural specificity are strengthened. So you have to understand those halves and resolve the question what expected. So stem 2, that is boundary stem. What is this? How can we identify? Distinguish A from B, that type of questions. How does X differ from Y? That type of questions. The questions like this: equality versus equity versus empowerment, 2024 question. Religiosity versus communalism, 2017. Indian versus Western secularism, 2014 and 18. Regional disparity versus diversity, 2024. This type of questions belongs to this stem, that is boundary stem. Here what we do when we encountered with these type of questions, here the two things look similar and the marks are entirely in the precision of the line between them. So define each crisply, then, and this is the part weak answers skip. Show the threshold, the exact condition under which the first becomes the second. So this is the most learnable stem because the set of boundaries is finite. So you have to define both each crisply and show the exact threshold. So the exact threshold. When the exact condition under which the first becomes the second. This is you have to show in the answer. This is the most learnable stem because the set of boundaries is finite. So when comes to stem 3, that is verdict stem. How to identify, how to signal by, to what extent do you agree, has X last relevance, etc. Caste relevance, 2020. Globalization's influence on cultural diversity, 2016. Customs suppressing reason to obscurantism, 2020. This type of questions are belongs to this the verdict stem, that is stem number 3. Here you must take clear defensible position and give the strongest version of the opposing cases before you defeat it. So a verdict answer with no counter argument reads as assertion, not an evaluation. So state your verdict early, build the strongest objection, then show why your position survives it or justify it. So this is the way you have to write an answer. Then stem number 4, the mechanism stem. What you have to signal: why, account for, give reasons. These type of words you when encountered in the question, that that type of question belongs to stem number 4, that is the mechanism stem. So we have few questions here. Why human development lagged economic development 2023? Why young women's suicide is rising 2023? Why poverty persists despite programs 2018? In this type of questions, what examiner is want? Here the examiner wants a casual chain, not a list. The failure mode is bullet pointing disconnected factors. Instead of that, link them. This condition produce that pressure, which under this structure yields that outcome. So this is the cause mechanism consequence. A chain, not a heap. You don't write a list. You link the chain. So this engine is one instruction have. Read the stem, name its type, choosing the matching shape, then run society machine inside the stem. The machine supplies the content, the stem dictates the form. So this is the way you have to write an answer. When you read the question, after reading the question, identify the stem, and you have to shape the answer and then complete the answer. That is the way of you write a good answer in the society section. Then we are moving to the next segment, that is the society engine. What is the society engine? Here, pull it together into one master sequence. That is, you can run on any question in this section, including one you have never seen. That is the society engine. What is the society engine? Here is inherited structure. Then what leads to modern pressure? Then leads to what? Tension at the scene. Then leads to verdict. Continuity within change. So name the traditional structure in the question is built on caste, family, religion, tribe, gender, region. This is the traditional structure, that is inherited structure. Then what? Modern pressure. Name the modern pressure pressing on it. That is globalization, urbanization, technology, hmm, technology, liberalization, migration, and ultimate the pandemic. This is the modern pressure. Then look at the friction precisely. What is the friction? Like tension at the scene. That is the friction. Not the interact, but where and how the old form strains against the new force. Then this is the tension at the scene. Then verdict. What is the verdict? And here is the deep truth about Indian society, that the examiner is almost always testing. It neither shatters nor stays frozen. It absorbs and adapts. This is the way the strong answer lands, far more often than not. And continuity with change, the structure survives by changing its function. As far as this is concerned, we have to take another class. Then only you can understand easily. The examiner handed you this template in plain text in 2021. How does Indian society maintain continuity in traditional social values? Enumerate the changes takes place in it. This is the question we have to take. Enumerate. This is the question in Indian stated openly. Continuity and change held together. Every other question in the section is a specific instance of it. And the preparation instruction you have to follow that: do not prepare society as a topic, then definition, then examples, etc. Prepare it as a structure, then pressure, then theme, then verdict. This is the way of preparing society. For any topic: caste, giant family, tribal life, women's work, regionalism, anything, ask what inherited structure is this and what modern force is acting on it. Where exactly do they grind against each other? That is seam, that is tension. And does the structure in the end break, freeze, or adapt? Answer those four, and you have a structurally sound society answer, regardless of how topic the question surface looks. That is the last one verdict. So, this is the way of question thinking and writing an answer. Then, segment 6, that is engine running live. Let me run the whole engine start to finish on one real question. So, you see it procedure produce an actual answer, not just a diagram. I will take a boundary question because the boundary stem is one of the most aspirants fumble. The 2024 question: distinguish between gender equality, gender equity, and women's empowerment. Why is it important to take gender concerns into account in program design and implementation? This is the actual question. And note the constraint because it shapes everything. This is 150 words and 10 marks. That is the type. You cannot write leisurely essay. Three distinctions plus a justification in 150 words means every sentence has to earn its place. And learning to compress is itself a scoring skill. So watch how the STEM discipline actually helps under a word limit. Because I know the shape in advance, I don't waste words finding it. So first and foremost, what we have to do is name the STEM. That is distinguish between three things. Why is it important in program design? This is a boundary stem with a mechanism tail. So draw three precise lines. Then give the practical reason they matter. So that tells me my shape immediately. So three crisp distinctions, then one tight justification. If I drift into a general essay and women's status, I have failed the stem and burned my 150 words. So I don't do that. So now the three lines. What is the three lines? Equality, equity, empowerment. So, and the marks live entirely in their precision. Sorry, marks live entirely in the precision because these three terms are constantly blurred. So, equality is sameness of treatment, giving everyone the identical rights, resources, and opportunities, treating men and women the same. It is the formal same starting line idea. This is regarding equality. Then equity. Equity is a fairness of treatment, recognizing that men and women do not start from the same place. So identical treatment can entrench disadvantage. So equity gives differentiated support to reach a level outcome. The line between equality and equity is exactly this. Equality treats people the same. Equity treats them according to the need to make them equal. This is the simple thing we have to understand. Then after completion of equality and equity, we are moving to empowerment. So we completed equality and equity. Equity is equal treatment. Equity, equality, equal treatment. Equity, differentiated support because starting point is different. That is the equity. So empowerment is different in kind from both. It's not about treatment at all, it's about agency. So it's the expansion of women's own capacity to make and act on choices. It is the expansion of women's own capacity to make and act on choices. So economic, social, political power held by women themselves, not conferred on them. So the line here is equality and equity are things a system does to or for people. Empowerment is capacity that grows within them. So this is the boundary line. Then comes to mechanism tail. Why it matters in program design? Because a program built on equality alone, identical treatment, can deepen disadvantage when the starting points are unequal. That is equity. Only an equity lens corrects for the gap. And unless the designs also builds agency, we produce beneficiaries, not empowered citizens. So gender blind design defaults to the male norm and quietly excludes gender sensitive design. Equity based and empowerment oriented reaches women as they actually are. This is the line. And verdict, continuity within change, that is compressed. The three are a sequence, not synonyms. Equality sets the goal, equity is the method, empowerment is the outcome. That makes the gain self sustaining. That is the whole answer, and notice it fits the word limit because I knew the shape before I began. So that is the engine in one tight answer. That is why I named the stem. So I built three boundaries and a reason, not an essay. I ran the machine and listen is the same one this whole session turns on. I needed no rare facts. The marks came from the precision of the three lines and the clarity why they matter. So from the shape, not form stored information. In this paper, the marks were never hiding in rarer facts. They were hiding in the shape. Again, I am telling you, I am repeating the question. What is the question here? Gender equality versus equity and empowerment in the form of that question. So distinguish. In this question, what we have done so far is we are discussing about equality, equity, empowerment in the form of first of all what we have done. First of all, what we have done in the form of introduction, we have to identify the stem, distinguish with identify the stem and draw the three precise lines on equality, equity, and empowerment. Then giving practical reason. Then crisp distinction. Then white one tight justification. For that, what we have done, then equality, equity, and empowerment. And what after that empowerment, the mechanism tail we taken. That is the after that verdict. That is the completion of answer. Boundary, mechanism tail, three lines, then the matter. Verdict, what is the verdict here? A sequence, not synonyms. Equality is the goal, equity, the method, empowerment, the self sustaining outcome. Gender blind design defaults the male norm. That is why it matters. The verdict is also called as conclusion here. So that is the thing we have to shape the answer. So one more thing we are going to complete it here. That is one message to carry out of this room. Stop preparing, stop preparing society. Stop preparing for society as a pile of topics. And one more thing I have to tell you, The most important priorities for 2026 question themes, that is, first one, disruption of primary socialization. So screens replacing tactile care, language, empathy, regulation in children. And second one, platformization of the care economy, women in gig care work, income without social protection. And third one is regional demographic divergence, south aging, north young, federal and fiscal train. And fourth one is spatial exclusion in the new city, tenant profiling and premium enclave rebuild old divisions. Fifth one, digital persistence of caste, matrimonial algorithms preserve endogamy across distances. These are most important five intersections for to deepen for 2026. Primary socialization, screen screen replacing tactile care, platformization, gig economy, regional demographic divergence, then spatial new city, tenant profiling, premium enclave rebuild old divisions, digital persistence of caste matrimonial algorithms preserving endogamy across distances. And that is the one thing, start seeing it as a single repeated collision and inherited structure, meaning a modern pressure and you that seem judging what survives. That is why you could have answered the cryptocurrency question in 2021, the demographic winter question in 2024, fast food question in 2025. Questions on things you never revised. You don't revise the collision in advance. You run the machine on the tail. Old structure, new force, the seam between them, and a verdict that almost always lands on the deepest truth about this society. It adapts rather than shatters. Continue within change. So every topic, ask ask the four questions of the mission. What inherited structure? What modern pressure? Where is the seam? And does it break, freeze, or adapt? And before you write, name the stem, paradox, or boundary, or verdict, or mechanism. Keep these two tools distinct distinct in your head. The four questions are the machine that generates your content. The four stems are shape you pour it into. So run the tight framework in the right shape, and the answer build itself. Do that, and society paper starts being the unpredictable section everyone fears. It becomes the most predictable section in GS1 because every question, however new its surface, is the same machine asking to be run. But the question will change, the framework should not. Run it.